I heard her laugh before I saw her. That sharp, careless laugh she only used around her friends, the one that didn't belong to me. I was still in the hallway, juggling a Starbucks carrier and my laptop bag, when the words landed clean and unfiltered. She was saying she was expecting. She was saying it was by her ex. She was saying Mark had no clue. Her friends exploded into laughter like it was a punchline they'd been waiting for. I didn't rush in. I didn't freeze either. I stepped into the kitchen the same way I always did, set the coffee down on the counter, and looked at her. I asked her to say that again. No tone, no volume, just a flat request, like asking someone to repeat a meeting time. The room collapsed into silence. One friend stared at her phone. Another suddenly remembered she needed the bathroom. The one who always complained the loudest went pale first, like she'd just realized jokes don't always stay jokes. My wife didn't laugh. Her face drained so fast, it was almost impressive. She tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. She didn't answer. The TV kept playing some Netflix sitcom, canned laughter filling the gap where the truth had just been dropped. No one explained anything. No one had to. The sentence was already complete. I stood there for a few seconds longer than necessary, long enough to see the shift. Not guilt. Calculation. The same look she used at work when she was deciding how to manage fallout. I picked up my bag and said I'd be back later. Not angry. Not hurt. Just factual. I left the apartment with the sound of their whispers starting up behind me, softer now, tighter. That night, we sat across from each other at dinner. She talked about schedules and deadlines. Her phone stayed face down on the table. Every few minutes the screen lit up anyway. The same name flashed more than once. She noticed me noticing and slid the phone closer to her plate. A moment later, she excused herself to wash her hands. She took the phone with her. I didn't follow. I didn't ask. I finished my food, cleared my plate, and opened my laptop. Our shared calendar was still synced. Our accounts were still linked. Everything still assumed I was staying. That was the last assumption I allowed. The next morning started like every other weekday. Same alarm. Same gray light through the blinds. She moved around the bedroom with quiet efficiency, already dressed for work, already elsewhere. She didn't look at me when she said she had an early meeting. She didn't need to. She was used to not being questioned. I watched her leave from the kitchen, coffee in hand, phone already pressed to her ear as she walked down the hall. The door closed softly. No slam. No hesitation. That detail stayed with me longer than it should have. I opened my laptop and logged into our shared calendar. Everything was color-coded, clean, optimized. Vacation days. Doctor appointments. Team offsites. One entry caught my attention. A block labeled check-in. No location, scheduled for late morning. It overlapped perfectly with the prenatal appointment reminder I'd seen scribbled on a notepad by the bed 2 nights earlier. I didn't delete anything. I didn't change anything yet. I just watched patterns line up. By noon, her credit card activity updated. Parking garage near a medical building across town. Not the one near her office. Not the one she'd used last year. The timestamp matched the calendar entry exactly. In the afternoon, I noticed something else. A second messaging app on her phone backup, buried under a generic icon. I hadn't gone looking for it before. I didn't need to. It had synced automatically to our shared cloud storage, the one she'd insisted on keeping because it made life easier. The name inside wasn't new. It was familiar in the way old scars are familiar. Her ex. The one who was supposed to be history. The one who had supposedly just checked in a few months back. The messages weren't dramatic. No declarations. No fights. Logistics. Updates. Short confirmations. The kind of communication people use when they already know where they stand. That evening, she came home lighter than she'd been in weeks. Relaxed. Almost cheerful. She talked about office gossip, about someone in HR being let go. She laughed at the irony of managing other people's problems all day. She didn't mention the appointment. She didn't mention the parking garage. She didn't mention the other life running parallel to ours. After dinner, she fell asleep early. Phone charging on the nightstand. Screen lighting up once more before going dark. Same name. Same silence from her. I stayed awake. Not spiraling. Not pacing. Just moving. I ordered storage boxes. Medium size. Neutral color. Next day delivery. Then I opened a new document and started listing access points. accounts, subscriptions, services. By the time she rolled over in her sleep, everything I needed to know was already in place. The boxes arrived the next afternoon while I was on a conference call. The delivery notification popped up quietly on my screen, wedged between two budget spreadsheets. I didn't react. I finished the call, closed my laptop, and carried the boxes into the spare room one by one. She texted that she'd be late. No explanation. No apology. Just a statement, like weather. I opened our shared Amazon account and scrolled through recent orders. Prenatal vitamins she hadn't mentioned. A book about co-parenting, ordered under her profile, but shipped to a locker near her office. Not home. Never home. The more I looked, the quieter everything became. Patterns don't scream. They align. I checked location history next. Not obsessively. Just enough. Same parking lot, twice a week, always in the early evening. A Target lot on the edge of town. She told me she liked shopping there because it was calmer. The timestamps didn't match receipts. The visits were too short to be errands, too long to be coincidence. Her second messenger synced again while I was still logged in. A new message came through. No emojis. No affection. Just confirmation of timing. A reply followed minutes later, asking if she was still okay to talk tonight. She came home close to 9. She moved through the apartment like everything was normal, like nothing was off. She asked if I'd eaten. She didn't wait for an answer. She took a shower and brought her phone into the bathroom with her, music loud enough to cover notifications. I folded laundry while she was in there. Mine went into one pile. Hers stayed untouched. When she came out, wrapped in a towel, she mentioned a headache and said she was going to lie down early. She kissed my cheek out of habit. It landed wrong, like a reflex that had missed its target. I stayed in the living room. I logged out of shared cloud services one by one, changing passwords as I went. Nothing dramatic. Just quiet locks clicking into place. Later, when the apartment was dark, I opened our joint bank account. I didn't drain it. I separated it. Scheduled transfers. Updated billing information. Removed my name from future auto-renewals. Around midnight, her phone buzzed again. She didn't wake up this time. I saw the name on the screen from across the room. That was when I understood something important. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was assuming. I taped the first box shut and labeled it with a marker. My handwriting didn't shake. By the time I turned off the lights, half my things were already packed, and every digital thread tying me to her life was thinning fast. She didn't notice the boxes at first. They were stacked neatly in the spare room, out of her line of sight, where old coats and unused exercise equipment lived. That room had always been optional to her. I used it because I needed quiet. The next morning, she was already on her phone when she woke up. Screen angled away from me, thumb moving fast. She smiled at something I wasn't meant to see. Then she caught herself and smoothed her face before turning toward me. She said she'd be working from home that day. Said it casually, like a convenience. I nodded and poured coffee. No questions. No reactions. Silence had started doing the work for me. While she took another call on the balcony, I logged out of the last shared service. Streaming, cloud storage, ride apps. Each confirmation screen felt lighter than the last. The system was unwinding exactly the way it should. Around noon, I watched her through the glass door. She paced while she talked, voice low, shoulders tense. She laughed once. Not the careless laugh from the kitchen days ago. This one was controlled, reassuring. When she came back inside, she avoided my eyes. She asked if I'd moved something in the spare room. I told her I was organizing. That answer satisfied her. Organization was my role. She'd always trusted systems more than people. By mid-afternoon, the boxes were sealed. Clothes, books, personal documents, things I needed, things she never touched. The apartment still looked full. Nothing obvious was missing yet. That was intentional. She left around 4, said she was running errands. Took her car, took her phone, took the other life with her. That's when I moved fast. I forwarded my mail, updated my address, scheduled the last transfers. I exited our shared group chats without announcements. One by one, my name disappeared from threads that would keep going without me. Her first message came an hour later. A question mark. Then another message asking if everything was okay. I didn't open them. The system marked them unread. That mattered. She came home to an apartment that still looked normal. She didn't check the spare room. She didn't check the closet. She sat on the couch and scrolled, irritation creeping into her posture. Later that night, her phone buzzed again. Different tone. She stepped into the bathroom to answer. Locked the door. I carried the boxes to my car while she was distracted. The hallway lights flickered like they always did. No one noticed. When I came back upstairs, I left my keys on the counter. She didn't hear the door close behind me. I didn't go far that night. I checked into a short-term place across town, the kind built for consultants who needed silence and strong Wi-Fi. I unpacked only what I needed and left the rest sealed. The room felt temporary, which was the point. By morning, my phone was quiet. No missed calls. No notifications from shared apps. Just my own calendar, clean and empty. I made coffee and opened my laptop. I wasn't angry enough to be reckless. I was calm enough to be precise. Her ex wasn't hard to map. He'd never been. He worked freelance, bounced between projects, always close enough to look useful, never close enough to be accountable. The kind of man who relied on timing and secrecy more than skill. The kind who thought coming back meant picking up where things left off. I didn't contact him. I didn't need to. I reviewed public records, professional profiles, the overlaps he didn't bother hiding. A dissolved LLC. Late filings. A contract dispute he'd mentioned in passing months ago at a dinner I'd attended without caring. At the time, it sounded like background noise. Now it sounded like leverage. I didn't fabricate anything. I didn't threaten. I forwarded information to places that were already looking. Quiet nudges. Correct channels. The kind of actions that don't point back to anyone, because they're simply accurate. By early afternoon, her messages started stacking up. Still unread. The tone shifted without me opening a single one. Concern turned into irritation. Irritation sharpened into panic. I stayed off social media, but I didn't need it. Mutual contacts started moving differently. Conversations slowed. Group threads went silent where my name used to anchor logistics and decisions. Absence is louder when it's structured. That evening, I checked her location once more. The familiar parking lot. The same car. This time, she stayed longer. Too long. I imagined the conversation without picturing it. No drama. Just confusion bleeding into urgency. Later, an unfamiliar number tried to call me. I didn't answer. I blocked it. By nightfall, the first domino tipped. A public post disappeared. A profile went private. An email alert confirmed a review had been opened. Nothing explosive. Just pressure. The kind that forces people to choose where they stand. I closed my laptop and turned off the lights. She thought she was balancing lives. He thought he'd returned to something safe. Neither of them understood that systems fail quietly first. And once they start failing, they don't need help finishing the job. By the second day, the silence around her had changed shape. It wasn't absence anymore. It was exposure. I didn't have to be there to see it. People moved differently when structure disappeared. She relied on routine, on the perception of control. Without me buffering, organizing, smoothing things over, small cracks started showing in public. A mutual friend posted photos from a brunch I used to attend without thinking. She was there, smiling too wide, posture stiff. The caption talked about strong women and new chapters. The comments were careful, polite, short. The kind people leave when they don't want to ask questions in public. Later that afternoon, someone tagged her in a work-related post. A congratulatory tone that didn't match the timing. She didn't repost it. She didn't like it either. Silence where visibility used to be. That evening, one of her friends messaged me. Not to ask how I was. To ask if everything was okay with her. I didn't reply. The message stayed unread, a small unanswered that did more work than any explanation. She tried calling again, this time from her work phone. It rang once before going to voicemail. I hadn't blocked that number yet. I just didn't pick up. At a family gathering she'd planned weeks ago, my absence was unavoidable. I'd always handled logistics, arrivals, timing. Without me, things stalled. Questions hung in the air. Someone eventually asked where I was. She smiled and said I was busy. The smile didn't hold. Later, someone else said they thought they'd seen me moving out. Someone laughed it off. Another person didn't. That was the moment the room shifted. Not because of a revelation, but because no one rushed to defend the story anymore. When people stop filling in gaps for you, you feel it immediately. That night, she posted again. Something vague about loyalty and misunderstanding. It stayed up less than an hour before disappearing. I stayed offline. I cooked dinner. I watched something forgettable. My phone stayed face down, not because I was hiding, but because there was nothing left I needed to see. Before sleep, I checked one thing. Our shared emergency contact list. My name was still there. I removed it. Across town, she was realizing that silence doesn't argue back. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't reassure. It just leaves people alone with what they've already said out loud. And once that happens, everyone else starts hearing it too. By the third day, she stopped trying to sound composed. The messages kept coming, but the spacing between them changed. Long gaps followed by clusters, like someone pacing a room and picking up the phone every time the silence got too heavy. I still didn't open them. The unread count became its own answer. She showed up at my office building that afternoon. I wasn't there. I'd already shifted my schedule, rerouted my days. Security logged her name. They called my extension. It rang on an empty desk. She waited in the lobby longer than was comfortable. People noticed. She checked her reflection in the glass doors, adjusted her posture, tried to look like she belonged there for a reason. Eventually, she left. That evening, she tried a different approach. A message that sounded practical, calm, almost professional. She asked about shared documents, about files she needed for work. She framed it like a minor inconvenience, something we could resolve quickly. I revoked the last access instead. Her tone changed after that. Shorter messages. Sharper. Then nothing for a while. Late that night, she posted a story from her apartment. A dim shot of the living room. A line about quiet nights and reflection. The camera angle avoided the empty space where my things used to be. Anyone who knew us would have noticed anyway. I didn't react. I didn't view it. Across town, the other life she'd been managing started to wobble. His pressure was increasing. His own situation was tightening. The conversations that used to feel optional were becoming necessary. That kind of shift always shows. She tried reaching out to people who'd always known me through her. Casual questions masked as concern. The responses came slower than she expected. Neutral. Non-committal. People don't pick sides loudly. They just stop standing in the middle for you. At work, she overcorrected. Smiled too much. Took on extra meetings. Talked about stability and values. The contrast was noticeable to anyone paying attention. I stayed invisible. Not hiding. Just absent. I changed my number that night. Forwarded only what mattered. The rest disappeared into error messages and unanswered rings. Silence did what confrontation never could. It isolated without accusing. It exposed without explaining. By the end of the week, she wasn't asking where I was anymore. She was asking who knew. She finally found me because I stopped trying to avoid being found. I was leaving a grocery store near my temporary place when I saw her car pull in too fast, parking crooked across two spaces. She stepped out without fixing it. Hair pulled back, eyes sharp, movements controlled in the way people get when they've rehearsed what they're going to say and are terrified it won't matter. I didn't turn away. I didn't speed up. I kept walking at the same pace, bag in one hand, keys in the other. She called my name once. Not loud, just enough to make sure I heard it. I stopped, but I didn't turn around right away. I let the moment stretch until she was standing a few feet behind me, close enough to feel real. She asked where I'd been. Not emotionally, logistically, as if there had to be an explanation that made sense on paper. I turned then, looked at her the way you look at someone you recognize, but no longer include. I didn't answer the question. She talked fast after that. About misunderstandings. About timing. About how things sounded worse than they were. She mentioned stress, work, fear. She didn't mention the kitchen. She didn't mention her friends. She didn't mention the name that had lit up her phone night after night. I listened without reacting. No nodding. No tension. Just stillness. She stopped when she realized I wasn't interrupting. Silence does that. It forces people to hear themselves. She asked if I was leaving her. The word leaving landed heavier than everything else she'd said. I told her I had already left. Not dramatically. Just factually. The way you confirm a reservation that's already been made. Her face changed then. Not to anger. To something closer to panic. She said we needed to talk. Said this couldn't be decided like this. Said she was pregnant and things were complicated. That was the moment she expected emotion. Shock. Reaction. Negotiation. I told her the complication wasn't the pregnancy. It was the lie she'd told out loud, in front of people, assuming it would never reach me. She tried to step closer. I stepped back. Not far. Just enough. I said I wasn't disappearing. I was choosing where I no longer showed up. She stood there for a long moment after I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. That wasn't the confrontation she wanted. It was the one she couldn't rewrite. After that encounter, things unraveled faster than I expected and slower than she could handle. She tried to regain control by tightening everything at once. More calls to family, more visibility at work, more explanations offered where none had been requested. It read as confidence to people who didn't know her well. To those who did, it felt like overcompensation. The pregnancy stopped being a secret and started being a narrative. Not mine. Hers. Different versions reached different ears. Stress. Confusion. A marriage going through a phase. The details shifted depending on who was listening. The problem was that stories don't hold when there's no one standing quietly behind them. Her ex vanished from her orbit almost overnight. Not dramatically, just absence again, this time not by choice. His situation had tightened past the point of convenience. Whatever he'd promised became unsustainable the moment it required effort. That left her alone with explanations she could no longer outsource. At work, a routine review turned formal. Not disciplinary, just cautious. Trust recalibrated. People stopped looping her into decisions they used to hand her automatically. The tone changed. Subtle, but irreversible. She reached out again, this time without urgency. A message framed like reflection. She said she finally understood things. Said she saw where she'd crossed lines. Said she missed how steady everything used to feel. I didn't respond. Her apartment emptied of noise. Friends visited less often. When they did, they left earlier. Conversations shortened. Laughter stopped carrying. She posted less. When she did, it felt delayed, like she was trying to keep up with a version of herself that no longer existed in real time. I moved into a longer-term place. Changed my routine. Built days that didn't reference her at all. The quiet wasn't heavy anymore. It was clean. One evening, a mutual contact mentioned seeing her at a coffee shop, sitting alone, staring at her phone without touching it. Not waiting for a message. Just looking at the screen like it might explain something. That was the real collapse. Not loss of status. Not exposure. But the moment when the past stops answering. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt distance. She had tried to use a future as leverage without realizing she'd already traded the present. By the time she understood that, there was no one left to negotiate with. Just silence, doing exactly what it always does when it's earned. The last time I saw her was unplanned. It wasn't dramatic. No confrontation. No build-up. Just a shared space that didn't care about history. I was in line at a pharmacy, picking up something routine, when I noticed her reflection in the security mirror near the ceiling. She stood 2 aisles back, holding a basket she hadn't filled. She looked thinner. Not fragile. Just emptied of excess. Like someone who'd stopped performing because there was no one left watching. She noticed me at the same time. Our eyes met through the mirror first, then directly. For a moment, neither of us moved. The distance between us was measured, not accidental. She didn't approach right away. She hesitated. That alone told me everything. The woman who used to control rooms now needed permission that wasn't coming. When she finally stepped closer, she stopped a few feet away. Close enough to speak. Far enough to respect the boundary she'd learned too late. She said my name once. Not as a question. Not as a demand. Just acknowledgement. She talked quietly. About how things had fallen apart. About how she finally saw the pattern. About how she wished she'd handled things differently. She didn't ask me to fix anything. She didn't ask me to stay. She just spoke, like someone clearing space. I listened without interrupting. Without stepping in. Without offering reassurance. I didn't know her that anymore. She mentioned the pregnancy again, but without strategy this time. No leverage. Just reality. She said she was scared, not of being alone, but of finally understanding what she'd lost. I told her I wasn't angry. That part was true. Anger would have meant I was still engaged. I told her I'd already built a life that didn't require rewriting the past. That I wasn't punishing her. I was simply unavailable. She nodded. Slowly. Like someone accepting a diagnosis they delayed hearing. There was a long pause. The kind that used to make her uncomfortable. She didn't fill it this time. Before leaving, I said one thing. The only thing I'd planned to say if we ever stood in the same space again. I told her I hadn't disappeared. I had just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She stepped back and let me pass. As I walked out, I didn't feel relief or triumph. Just clarity. And that was enough to never return. Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories.